I'm Yi, and this talk follows the previous one by Jana and Danny, and this is a little bit more detailed one or technical one about the code contribution. Yeah, let's start. So we'll first go through the structure of Beam repository, Beam GitHub repository, and um, suppose you have a use case and you want to run some modified Beam code in your own pipeline, and how to set up the development environment and run that pipeline, and then consider contribute back, checking your code, open a pull request, and last check out when do I expect my change to get released, and basically this kind of workflow. Yeah, first, the Apache Beam GitHub repository is pretty much a mono repo, which means it includes everything, almost everything for a Beam project, including the SDK code, the runner side code, and build infrastructure, CI/CD, and also the website. Website includes the Beam website, and also we have some study things like a Beam playground or tour of Beam website, all in this repository. And some parts worth to note, like Java SDK lives in the SDK's Java, including the SDK Java core. This is the Java SDK core. It's pretty much stable. And on the runner side, there is a Java harness that is called SDK harness that is built on top of the portable framework. We also have other runners that is not on portable framework, like the legacy data flow runner that is in runner Google Cloud Data Flow Java Worker, and we also have other runners. And we also have SDK's Python, that is everything. Python SDK is a single package, single PyPy package that is different from Java, that we publish many different artifacts to Maven Central. And also Go SDK is in SDK Go is also a single package, I think. And there is also a Beam Proto definitions. We also call it a Proto SDK that defines the Beam model, and also like the Fun API, Runner API. Those, if we want to talk different languages between different language, use Proto definition, so it is unified in and recognized by runner side, also SDK side. And for the build infrastructure, it lives in this build source. We'll go through a little bit into this directory a little bit later. And as I just mentioned, the website in the website, and the CI/CD in the GitHub workflows. And we also have some independent repository under Beam project that is useful for you to start up your own pipeline. You can check out this Beam Starter Java and modify it to build your own pipeline. It already has the really minimum code, and the builder tools for it. I support both Maven and Gradle for Java, for example. And I think we also have example Maven artifact that it grows like to a more complicated Maven project. Yeah, and for the build infrastructure now, pretty much the Beam project has a single Beam module plugin that is a Gradle plugin. By the way, the Beam uses Gradle as its builder tools for both for Java, Python, and the Go SDK. Although Gradle lives in Java ecosystem, we also use Gradle to run Python tests, build the Python artifacts, and also for Go. So you would need a Java environment to build a Beam. That's it. And it's a Beam module plugin is pretty much a very huge Gradle plugin that manages everything, actually, including like Java dependencies, configuring projects, Java, Python, Go, Proto, or whatever. And we've tried to still, even though we have a homemade Beam module plugin, we try to follow the standard Gradle practice. So if that is said, there is a standard Java plugin, the Beam module plugin, we set up this Java plugin, and it's used the same way for like a typical Gradle project. If you want to build some artifact, it's called build, and run unit test, it invokes the test target for that Gradle. So pretty much the Gradle official documentation also applies to the Beam documentation in terms of build Beam. That's what we want to keep, even though Beam is becomes a very huge open source project. You can still use the standard Gradle documentation and to follow. All right, and then if you do not ever run a Apache Beam and just run a Beam pipeline on top of the released Beam, the good news is run a patched Beam should have just needed to do a minimum change in terms of your workflow. And so the left-hand side is workflow to build and run a Java Beam pipeline. Right-hand side is a Python pipeline. It's pretty much similar. It's just for Java, our dependencies come from Maven Central repository and other Maven repository. For example, the Confluence Kafka, they have their own repository on the IO Confluent. And you have your project depend on this repository, and you build a jar, and then launch the pipeline on this jar. And if you want to patch Beam code, then you have an additional step that is build your jar and stage into a Maven local repository that is locally. And your project will depend on both Maven Central repository for other dependencies and Maven local repository for the dependency, the Beam artifact that you just changed. And the remaining things are the same. This is the overall picture. Similar for Python pipeline, the dependency comes from PyPy. And for released Beam, Apache Beam is also published to PyPy. But if you want to change Python, you can build a Python turbo on top of the Beam repos local clone and use it as a dependency of your project. And the remaining pretty much the same. Well, how to build a Beam artifact? We needed to set up your environment. And the minimum prerequisite, as I just noted, is you are needed to have a Java environment because it's a Gradle project overall, and Gradle runs on top of Java. And currently, Java 11 is used for all the CI/CD, and I think being also supported from Java 8 to Java 21, and Java 25 support is on schedule once it's released officially. That I expect to be in October this year. And it should also work. And if you are working around with different Java version, one recommended way to manage Java version is use this SDK man. Similarly for Python, and there is a PyEnv and virtualenv. You can manage Python environment and virtual environment. For Go, it's simpler. We have a minimum Go version. I think that is on 1.21 now, although Beam compiles on more recent Go, but it has a bootstrap process work for you. You can have all the Go environment, and it will bootstrap to install newer Go and compile Beam Go SDK. And I would like to say one thing: the Docker environment is non-optional. Previously, it's needed for many kind of development, and we try to make this optional because we know some company, even within Google, we have very hard time to get a Docker environment approved. So some people do not have access to Docker in their local machine for security reasons. And there are two ways well working around this one way. We kind of finish or patch or fix the loop back mode of environmental modes. So you previously some code needed, if you want to test it locally, you need to run into a SDK container, and now you can run it, use a loop back. I think this is no default for Python, Flink runner, something like that, a local runner. And also for if you want to run a data flow runner v2 job, there is a SDK container involved, and you don't need to build this SDK container anymore and just serve this environment. Just a side note here. Oh, suppose we have environment set up, you have Java and Python in your path, and it's good to go. And to get code, modified code, you can use whatever text editor you want, but if you want to make life easier, it's recommended to use some IDE. And IntelliJ is a popular Java IDE. And there are ultimate version that you need to subscribe, and there is a community version if you use for open source development. And I think this suffice is sufficient for Apache Beam, which is an open source project. And it should just work. I remember can just say he hates this word because sometimes it should just work, but it's actually not. But I would like to say here, and if you have an environment set up and you open Beam root directory on your IntelliJ, it should do all the initialization itself. And at the end, you will see some like button in your build Gradle. That is the project, defines the project. And you see that button, then it means the Gradle can recognize Beam project and it can run that for you. You click that button to run word count, for example, and that can make sure you have your environment IDE set up. And for Python and Go, it's much simpler because it's less overhead, and in general Java is very verbose. And you use VS Code, like it highlights the syntax, and is sufficient for development, I think. And you just need to open the Python or Go folder, and you can set up interpreter so VS Code can run the code for you also. And all of these setup and are based on this documentation lives in Apache Beam GitHub repo. It's called code change. Can just check out this. It has detailed instructions. Well, so we now have both IDE and the environment set up, and we are good to run the patched Java pipeline. And then I will talk about the run Python patch pipeline. We now have actually two projects. One is the Beam project, another is the project of your pipeline. And you first need to, here is about your user project. You can use a Maven project or Gradle project. And for the Maven project, you will need to add the Maven snapshot repository or Maven and the Maven local repository to your POM file. That defines your Maven project. The snapshot is we publish a Beam snapshot built on Beam master, Beam head nightly, and this makes life a little bit convenient because you only need to build your sub project, the Beam. For example, you change the I/O, you only need to build that I/O stage into your Maven local and do not need to build the whole Beam. The other part of the Beam can come from this snapshot repository. And this shows how you add a Maven snapshot repository to either Maven project or your Gradle project. If you set up your project from Apache Beam Maven archetype, then it is a Maven project. If you check out your code from the Beam start Java that I showed you, it supports a Gradle project. All right, and on the other side of the Beam project itself, you can build the Beam artifact by this single command that is a Gradle command. And Gradle is self-contained. It has a wrapper, so it should just run. And the target name is published to Maven local. It will publish a jar to this local Maven repository that will be recognized by both Maven or Gradle of your own project. How to make sure your pipeline get indeed takes your modified jar, and for Dataflow runner, you can check in Dataflow UI, and there is a file to stage in the Dataflow UI. If you expand it, you will find some other jar dependency come from Gradle cache because it is a Gradle project, but there is one that you just build come from this your own Maven repository, and this you can confirm for example, the Kafka IO jar come from the command that you just built. It's not come from the Maven the remote Maven repositories. Yeah, for Python, it's very similar. You also build a Beam SDK Turbo, and you can stage it. It should you can just run a single Python command, and you will then install that Turbo under your current virtual environment, and you submit pipeline for Dataflow. One more thing you need to do is to explicitly set the SDK location to the Turbo you just built, and it should then run on your patched Beam code. So now you have a patched Beam code that add some functionality or fix some bugs, and we highly recommend you contributing back if you find it can be generalized, and other users can benefit from it, and from the new features. New features can be very tiny one, or like a one-line code change if some config is not get exposed, or a whole new I/O connectors, or some runner improvement, or to bug fix, or dependency upgrade. These are all like a very popular contributions. One thing to note, for Java, we kind of have in the area of like a multiple Java long-time support, both have like a substantial usage. Being still on Java 8 on the majority of its component, that said Beam is currently support Java 8, but it's just get deprecated in Beam 2.66. It will get removed in Beam 3. That is a breaking change in Beam 3 plan. But for example, the Iceberg IO, the more recent version of Iceberg IO, Apache Iceberg already dropped Java 8 support, but it's still possible for certain Beam component to build on top a newer Java version instead of get blocked by Java 8 status. We recently upgraded, for example, the Debian IO to Java 17 because the Debian IO latest version already dropped even Java 11 support. So there is a little bit thing you need to do in your builder.gradle file if your new components is on newer Java version, and it's possible. Just check out this. All right, and we are making pull request, and I think in the simplest case, if you just fix the typo, you don't need to worry about all these slides. GitHub now supports you edit the code directly and open a pull request if it's a tiny one, and then it will run all the tests automatically and for using the GitHub action. And if you do want to like open pull request by checking out the code and push it, yeah. Then it should also work the same way. Instead, for the test, we have two kind of tests. One is a pre-commit test that is running automatically as a part of your pull request before you submit, and another is post-commit that includes some more expensive tests like integration test on data flow. If you add some integration test, you cannot run directly, but we have a workaround that you can use some trigger file and change that file and as part of your pull request, then it will run that post commit as well. And to get the test result, and you can just check the pull request summary page, and there is this check hyperlink, and it will show which exact test fails. This is not a quite intuitive, unfortunately, but so I put this in my slide. I think this slide will be public. Yeah, for the reviewer part, all the code checked in Beam repo goes through the code review process. So anyone, I want to highlight here is anyone can be a reviewer. There is very often we have some external partner check in IO for their own company, and they do the review in that same pull request. And after they reviewed, and there is a committer final approval, and we just merge it because Apache requires only committers can merge the pull request. But anyone is welcome to review comment. This is also part of the contribution and a very important part. And we build a review bot, and if it works the way expected, anyone opens a pull request and it passes test, the review bot will assign a relevant reviewer. You can also explicitly assign a reviewer. And after the review, a pull request get approval, it will assign to a committer for final approval and merge. So we have a PR bot for that. Yeah, finally, the last thing, you have merged your code, and you want to see if it's in some Beam, in the next Beam release. And one way you can do is go to this pull request, past pull request, click that commit, and it will show up all the tag that this commit in. For example, this pull request appear in Beam 2.66. And you can also check out the release blog. Yeah, that's pretty much all the thing. And yeah, thank you.